We're going to show you how to make a very simple yellow cake or vanilla cake, something to always have in your arsenal. You can make it into cupcakes, you can make it into rounds, you can make it into a sheet cake. Later on, we're going to show you, oh, just almost knocked over the flour. That would have been funny. All right, let's try that again. I know, right? We're going to eventually need to do a blooper reel. Yeah, totally. Let's put that over there so I don't touch you. All righty. So now we're going to show you how to make a standard vanilla cake. This is very versatile. You can make it into cupcakes, you can make it into a round cake, layer cake, or you can make it into a big full sheet cake. Very simple, something always good to have in your arsenal. So we always start with what's called the creaming method, where we have some room temperature butter, must be room temperature, in our stand mixer that we are going to cream together with our sugar. You do not want to skip this step. This helps to make a very light and fluffy cake. We're going to let this go until they're nicely creamed together. It will become pretty pale and light and fluffy, and that's what you're looking for. So once my butter and sugar have been creaming together for a couple minutes, I'm going to turn off the mixer, I'm going to lower it, and I'm going to scrape down the sides. Sometimes some of the butter, depending on your paddle, can get stuck down on the bottom and not really get incorporated. And then sometimes you can actually have a little bit of an explosion in your cake with little pockets of butter. So we're going to make sure that's all nice and well combined. Crank it back up. Then, once our mixer's back on, we're going to add our eggs. Try and add them one at a time. Make sure they are at room temperature. If your eggs are too cold, sometimes it can cause the butter to chill a little bit and get a little lumpy. We want to make sure they're nice and room temperature. We're going to try and add them one at a time as best you can. Once all of our eggs have been incorporated, again, I like to go ahead and turn down the mixer, give it a little scrape, make sure it's all really, really nice and well mixed. Make sure it's not sticking to the beater. And then we're going to add some vanilla, of course. So we're using some vanilla paste. Surprise, surprise. We're going to let that get all nice and mixed in. And while this is mixing, I'm going to talk about our wet and our dry ingredients. So right here, I have some lemon lime soda. You could use champagne. You could use any sort of sparkling soda that you have. We find that lemon lime works great, so does champagne. And then we're going to add our sour cream to our soda. Sour cream is an addition to cake that makes things really, really nice and moist, and it's delicious. So then I'm going to mix together my sour cream and my lemon lime soda. And in here, I have my dry ingredients. This is our flour, and here we have our leavening. This is our baking powder, our baking soda, and our salt. We're going to add that to our flour, and we're just going to whisk it together. This also helps to make sure there's no real big lumps in our flour. And then, we're going to add our wet and our dry ingredients alternately. And we always like to start and end with the dry. So we'll add about a third of the dry, about half of the wet, a third of the dry, the rest of the wet, and we end with the last third of the dry. All of these measurements can be close and approximate. Just make sure you're not adding too much of the flour that would make the mixer have to work too hard, and you don't want to add too much of the liquid or else the whole thing gets very soupy and messy. Alright? Alright, so I'm ready to add about a third of my dry ingredients. I'm going to turn it down slightly so I'm not covered in flour. A spouted measuring cup like this really helps you to get all of the ingredients in there. Sometimes they go everywhere. And then about half of my wet mixture. About half of what's left of my dry ingredients. the last half of my wet ingredients. And last but not least, the final addition of our dry ingredients. At this point, you want to mix until it just starts to come together. You don't want to overmix this. We start developing the gluten in the flour. That will make a tough bread-like cupcake. We want nice, light, soft cupcakes. So once all of your dry and wet ingredients have been incorporated, I always like to take it down off the mixer. Make sure there's no dry ingredients left on the beater. Try and get as much of the batter off the beater as you can. Say that 10 times fast. And I always like to do one last stir with our spatula. Sometimes little pockets of butter and dry ingredients can get caught down in the bottom, so we're just going to fold it all the way through, make sure everything looks nice and homogeneous, and then we're ready to fill our cake pan. So now we're ready to bake our cake. You can make them into cupcakes, which I'm going to show you in a second, but you can also make this into layer cakes. This is kind of a standard 9-inch cake pan. If you want to know how to prepare this for baking, go back and watch the brownie episode. I like to use the wrapper from the butter, sprinkle it with a little flour, make sure it gets all nice and coated, tap the rest out. Makes a very, very easy cake. So for cupcakes, I just like to put my liners in there. We use a standard cookie scoop. You can find these online. They're a great way to make sure that all of the cupcakes are the same size and therefore cook at the same time. But I like to take my batter, scrape it up the side of the bowl, make sure it's nice and level, and then I scoop it right into the pan. And then I do that for each one. I know that all of my cupcakes are going to be the same size. And just before I put them into the oven, I like to take some cooking spray and I spray the whole thing on the top just in case the cupcake rises a little more than I thought and we don't want it to stick to the edge of the pan. It makes it difficult to get out.